Well, hello and welcome to the CBT Nugget for the CompTIA Security Plus certification, the 2008 edition. My name is Michael Shannon, and I want to welcome you to the CBT Nugget series. I'm very excited to bring to you this information. I love security. I love network security. I'm a Security Plus guy. I've also got the CISSP certification and the Cisco CCSP certification. So you're at the right place at the right time, my friend, to learn about security in this very valuable certification. In this first Nugget movie, we're going to cover 4 key objectives. First of all, we're going to get an overview, an introduction to this CompTIA Security Plus. It's been around a while, but there's a lot of changes that are being made to this certification. We'll also look at the 6 domains of the Security Plus initiative and the different percentages that the domains make up. We'll also look at a breakdown of some of the objectives within those domains. And then finally, I'll give you some tips, some best practices on how to approach this CBT Nugget series to be as successful as you can as a Security Plus candidate and a security professional in this growing industry. The CompTIA Security Plus certification has been around for several years. This is the new 2008 edition. Realize that Security Plus from CompTIA is a vendor-neutral credential, so it's not going to focus on Microsoft technology or Cisco technology or Unix or Linux or so forth. It's basically an open, standard, vendor-neutral, internationally recognized validation of skills and knowledge of foundation-level security. And it's used by many organizations and many security professionals all around the world. The knowledge base and the skills that are measured by the Security Plus examination have been extracted from an industry-wide job task analysis, or JTA, and they were validated using an international or global survey in the 4th quarter of 2007. So this is cutting-edge information. Now, the results of this survey were put together and compiled to help validate the content, the objectives in the 6 domains that we're going to look at later on in this introduction. It also helped to derive the overall weighting domains. For example, how much % of the examination each domain makes up. So this guarantees pretty much the relative importance of the content. Security Plus by CompTIA is a specialty-focused certification, and it's really aimed at the IT security professional who already has a minimum of 2 years experience in network administration with a focus on security. Now, you don't have to have that to be able to take and pass the exam, but it is helpful. You also want to have some day-to-day technical information security experience. If you don't yet have that experience, don't worry. This CBT Nugget is going to help you prepare for that real-world experience. I'll be able to pass along my years of knowledge and experience as a consultant, as a trainer, as an author, as a security technician, and you can take that information, pass the exam, and take that to your prospective employer. The Security Plus is also aimed at the professional who has a broad knowledge of security concerns and implementation within several security domains. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 6 domains of the Security Plus 2008 edition. So as I said, there are 6 domains to the Security Plus 2008. Domain 1.0 is Systems Security, and this makes up 21% of the exam, or over 1/5 of the information. Domain 2.0 is Network Infrastructure, 20% of the exam. Then you have Domain 3, Access Control, at 17% of the exam. Domain 4, Assessments and Audits, 15% of the exam. Cryptography, also 15% of the exam. And Organizational Security, 12% of the exam. Now, what types of topics would you expect or objectives in the system security domain? Well, this will be differentiating among different system security threats. Things like malware, spyware, adware, things like that. You'll have to explain the security risks that pertain to system hardware and peripherals, like cell phones and USB devices. You'll implement operating system hardening practices and procedures to make workstations and servers more secure. Things like patches, fixes, service packs, things like that. You want to know how to carry out appropriate procedures to establish application security for components like ActiveX and Java and cookies, peer-to-peer file sharing programs. You want to know how to implement security applications like host-based IDS, personal software firewalls, antivirus, and anti-spam. You'll also want to be able to explain the purpose and application of virtualization technology. That's the first domain. The second domain is network infrastructure. In this domain, you want to know how to differentiate between the different ports and protocols, their respective threats, and mitigation techniques. These are attacks like spoofing attacks, TCP/IP hijacking, denial of service, and distributed denial of service attacks. You'll also want to be able to distinguish between network design elements and components, like what's a DMZ, what's a VLAN, what's network address translation. You also want to know the appropriate use of network security tools to facilitate network security. This would be network-based intrusion detection systems, host-based IDS, what's a firewall, why do we use proxy servers, what's a honeypot, protocol analyzers, systems like that. Then we'll also want to apply the appropriate network tools to help our network security solution. How do we apply proxy servers? How do we apply internet content filters and the like? Then, we want to explain the vulnerabilities and mitigations associated with different network devices. Things like privilege escalation, weak passwords, denial of service, and backdoors. We want to explain the vulnerabilities and mitigations associated with different types of transmission media, as well as explain the vulnerabilities and implementation mitigations associated with wireless networking. We'll talk about things like war driving, SSID broadcast, rogue access points, and the like. In the third domain, we'll talk about access controls. This is identifying and applying industry best practices for access control methods, as well as explaining common access control models like MAC, DAC, and role and rule-based access control. We want to be able to organize users and computers into the right security groups and roles, as well as distinguish between appropriate rights and privileges. We want to learn how to apply appropriate security controls to file and print resources, and be able to compare and implement logical access control methods like access control lists, group policy, password policies, and the like. We want to understand the various authentication models and identify the components of each one of those. We'll talk about 1, 2, and 3-factor authentication and single sign-on. We want to understand various authentication models and identify the components of each, things like Radius and LDAP, CHAP and PAP. We'll learn the difference between identification and authentication, and we'll understand how to apply physical access security methods like physical access, hardware locks, what's a man trap, physical tokens, video surveillance, things like that. In the fourth domain, we'll be looking at assessments and audits. We'll look at how to conduct risk assessments and implement risk mitigation. We'll be able to carry out vulnerability assessments using a wide variety of tools like port scanners, vulnerability scanners, protocol scanners. We'll talk about the proper use of penetration testing versus vulnerability scanning. We want to look at monitoring tools on systems and networks and detect security-related anomalies. We'll use tools like Performance Monitor, Systems Monitor, Performance Baseline, and Protocol Analyzers. We want to be able to compare and contrast different types of monitoring methodologies, like behavior-based, signature-based, and anomaly-based. We want to execute proper logging procedures and evaluate the results. We'll look at different applications and services, and we'll look at the importance of conducting periodic audits of system security settings. The fifth domain is the domain of cryptography, and we'll look at a wide variety of general cryptography concepts, things like key management. What is symmetric key and asymmetric key? We'll talk about CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We'll explain basic hashing concepts and various algorithms to appropriate applications, things like SHA, MD5. We'll explain basic encryption concepts And we'll also look at various algorithms there. We'll look at DES, triple DES, RSA, AES, and AES 256. We'll explain and implement different security protocols like SSL TLS, SMIME, PPTP, and HTTPS. We'll also look at things like L2TP, IPsec, and Secure Shell. We want to explain the core concepts of PKI, or a public key infrastructure, as well as looking at how to implement PKI and certificate management. Finally, we'll look at, in Domain 6, organizational security. We'll look at explaining redundancy planning and its components. We'll define hot sites, cold sites, and warm sites. We'll implement disaster recovery procedures. We'll look at planning, disaster recovery exercises, backup and restore schemes. We'll differentiate between and execute appropriate incident response procedures. We'll talk about forensics, chain of custody, damage and loss control. We'll identify and explain applicable legislation and organizational policies. We'll talk about concepts like SLAs, due diligence, due process, data classification, acceptable use policies, and the like. We'll explain the importance of environmental controls like fire suppression, shielding, and HVAC. And then finally in this domain, we'll look at the concepts of how to reduce the risks of social engineering. We'll talk about hoaxes, phishing, dumpster diving, and the incredible importance of user education and awareness training, which is one of the reasons why you're here. Well, those are the 6 domains of Security Plus, and kind of a breakdown of some of the objectives. I didn't go through all of them, but we're going to cover all the objectives in the upcoming CBT Nugget. So put on your seatbelt, okay? And I'm going to give you some quick tips. What I'd like to see you do is take some good notes as we go through. Maybe outline each one of these Nugget movies. Wouldn't be a bad idea. Maybe go through this entire series twice. Maybe go through one time and outline each one of these particular nuggets. Then go back through the entire series again, let's say a week before you're going to take your exam. And then you should be ready to pass the Security Plus 2008 edition. Well, without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our first topic, which is our first domain, system security. You ready? All right, let's do it.